The key difference between us humans and animals is the fact that we have laid out rules to govern our society. No matter how similar we are to the vicious wolf in times of war, or the curious ape in our expeditions for knowledge, there will always be rules to separate us from them. However, what happens when someone decides to break these tightly guarded guidelines? And I don't mean your everyday laws like jaywalking or running a red light. I mean something much more primal. What happens if someone reverts to their baser instincts? What if you had to eat one of your fellow peers to break their sinew and gnaw on their supple flesh? Are you no better than a vicious wolf in the winter willing to eat anything, even one of their pack members, just to survive? For most, you'd be worse. And for the Native Americans of the Northeast, such as the Algonquian or Cree, it meant you'd be an example in their tales of the Wendigo. The beast varies in description from tribe to tribe, but it is typically seen as a monstrous figure looming taller than any human, sometimes as tall as trees, with a thin skeletal body and glowing eyes. What's certain, though, is its symbolic significance as being a reference for being selfish, with cannibalism as its parallel. During the winter months, this monster is said to prowl the land for human flesh to consume, to take what it wants and to never hold it back. One can become a Wendigo through various means, such as being cursed by a shaman, or even simply dreaming of the beast. But the most well-known is through the consumption of your fellow man. To throw away your humanity and kill your brother so that you may survive the harsh winter will only lead you down a deeper path of self-destruction. With time, you will notice your body changing, thinning out, claws forming, and perhaps your bones twisting and growing to accommodate the new hateful energy that now grows within you. You would no longer be considered a human, but a monster. Tales of the Wendigo hold deep significance for its purpose in native folklore. Where exactly did it begin, though? Who was the first Wendigo? Plenty of tribes in North America weave their own tales of horror around the creature, but one in particular deals with a man selling his soul to the devil in order to bolster his strength, so that a battle may be won for his tribe. His tribe had won the battle against their enemy, but once life went back to normal, the warrior was no longer welcome. For all that he gave up for his tribe, he was made to leave and wander the lands as this monster he had become so that his tribe may survive. This man is said to be the first Wendigo, and from others would turn into the same beast by consuming human flesh. The story of the Wendigo could be said to be a cautionary tale to ward people from committing what is widely considered one of the most heinous acts. When you're part of a tribe in the winter, unable to grow food and the hunt is scarce, it would be tempting to devour your neighbor. Thus, these stories are meant to help those in trying times, to help them understand that if you want to get through your hunger, you'll only hinder yourself by breaking down those that would only want to help you. While this is the most straightforward understanding of the Wendigo, another interpretation would be that the beast reflects upon our primal wrath. When we dive headlong into hate and rely off of the worst parts of ourselves, a monster emerges. While the stories of the Wendigo are meant to be told around a campfire, or as a way of teaching a valuable lesson, a very brutal yet valuable lesson, were there any sightings of this beast? That's hard to say since most stories of the Wendigo are of Native American folklore, but there is one true story I'd like to talk about. If Wendigos exist, then someone must be out there trying to stop them, wouldn't there? In comes Jack Fiddler. Jack Fiddler was a shaman-in-chief among the Anishinaabe people who saved people from becoming Wendigos by killing them in the early 1900s. Some of them, it was said, were mercy killings as dictated by their tribal rights. Others were said to have been killed because they truly desired human flesh. This can be linked to what is clinically referred to as Windigo Psychosis, where a person craves human meat. This is different from someone like Jeffrey Dahmer, who killed to satiate his feelings for dominance and then ate his victims afterwards. People with Windigo Psychosis crave humans as food and kill only to satiate their actual hunger. Killing is merely part of the process. And Jack Fiddler had his mind set on stopping those who would become Wendigos. It should be no surprise to anyone that Jack Fiddler was arrested in 1907 and would be eventually sentenced to hanging. He, however, was planned to be released due to a successful appeal. Although, this all came too late since he died 3 days prior to his release due to consumption. The Wendigo is a merciless beast that wants nothing more than to eat its once fellow human. Its existence is told through tales of wisdom and terrifying stories to keep your children from straying too far from the path you hope they continue down in their precious life. I'm certain we've all met what we would consider horrible people. Perhaps we would call them monsters, but at least they aren't Wendigos. But what if they were? What if you were forced to face your worst enemy who had one day decided, or perhaps was forced, to eat another human to survive? What if it was your friend who broke such an important rule in our society? Let's take a dive into that situation. What say you, dear listener? You shoot your last flare out into the cold air, and you stare deeply at the long streams of light falling back to the earth as it explodes high in the sky. What was there to do now? It was the third day of being trapped in the middle of nowhere, and if nobody saw any of your flares over the course of those few days, you were dead, no two ways about it. The abandoned cabin you found is barely keeping you and your two friends warm, but you highly doubt one of them really cares if they'll freeze. You were once 3 strong on your way through the Canadian wilderness, but an avalanche from a nearby mountain left you stranded. All 3 of your snowmobiles destroyed, and a friend with a badly broken leg bleeding out quickly from being thrashed against a boulder hiding under the blanket of snow. With luck, there was this abandoned cabin, or at least you'd think it was abandoned. It looked as if it were occupied not long before the snowstorm hit. But either way, you and your 2 friends were going to take over the residence for the time being. You'd all make it out soon enough. Or at least that's what you told yourself before you realized you lost your phone in the snow that was only piling on by the hour. The 2 of you went to sleep on that first night, shivering while wrapped in odd assortments of cloth and blankets to keep warm. The one with the broken leg, however, well, he was out cold. It didn't take long after waking up for you and your remaining friend to realize he was gone, taken by the pain and cold of the winter haven you all intended on relaxing in. It was supposed to be an escape from your lives that were drowning in work to catch up and finally feel refreshed, which you feel like you hadn't experienced in years. Now you're trapped in a snowstorm with a dead body, and in time, something much worse. Fear and anxiety take you and your friend. No food or drink is in the house, leaving you starving and dehydrated. To keep calm and retain as many calories as possible, you sit in the corner, trying to sleep the days away until help would come. Thankfully, you found some flares with a med kit under a bed on the second day, so your thoughts of rescue are less than fleeting. By the third day, though, as you realized you've used all but 1 flare, your hopes of survival become actually fleeting. You decide that if nobody comes by tomorrow, then you would make the trek through the snow back to your hotel where you were all staying. It would be more than 5 miles to get there, but to do anything in the hopes of surviving would be better than dying out in the middle of nowhere. Your friend, however, is less than stellar about leaving the cabin. At night on the 3rd day, he starts talking about a weird dream he had the night prior. A figure as tall as the trees with pale skin, long claws, and what he thought were antlers walked by the dark distance of a forest. The trees rustled as it walked by, not noticing your friend stare up at the looming figure as if it were a dark god visiting its tiny creations. He shivered as the howling night air whistled in his ears, something crawling beneath his skin, making its way up to his head. And before he woke, the giant figure turned to look down at him, its glowing white eyes as bright as stars engulfing the night, as if darkness never existed wherever it appeared. As far as you could tell, your friend never slept that night. You awake to him rustling in the kitchen, you think looking for food, but when you walk to him out of curiosity, you see him holding a butcher's knife. His face is smeared in blood and is noticeably pale, while his hands shake as if he were standing on a sliding fault line. It wouldn't be much of a surprise that his complexion was noticeably lighter, considering you've both been without food and water for a few days. But when he opens his mouth, showing teeth that are noticeably thicker and longer, you can't help but see all these details pointing towards that of a monster standing before you. He growls at you as he lunges with the blade thrusting forward. You dodge quickly, but your friend retaliates with a swiftness you had never seen your friend possess by slicing your face. You fall to the ground, blinded by pain and blood filling your eyes, and he looks down on you, his jaw seemingly unhinged, his now long fingers wrapped around the blade with a death grip, ready to slice you from groin to gullet. But he stops for a moment and perks his ears. He gazes around in seemingly random directions before pointing his eyes towards the back window. As if thrown by a giant, he launches himself through the window, landing in the soft snow and sprinting for the forest in the distance. As he runs, the sounds of oncoming snowmobiles become apparent to you. 2 police officers approach the broken window, seeing you shivering on the ground with a massive gash across your face. They prepare to take you away to the hospital by wrapping you in a thermal blanket and giving you the last of one of their waters that they intended to use for lunch. As they call for backup over their radio, mentioning a mutilated body needed for pickup, you carefully open your eyes to get a look at your surroundings. You see through squinting eyes your friend who died on night 1 of this hell, with his legs torn to shreds and his stomach gouged open. You look away out of fright as bile starts to crawl up your throat, your sight inadvertently looking out the shattered window. In the distance within the forest that dwelled less than 100 yards away, you see 2 red dots bobbing up and down. They come closer, just reaching beyond the forest border, and you see what used to be your friend, his face dripping with blood, but now his jaw completely gone, held in his hand as if it were a weapon. You want to yell to the police officers to tell them that the killer was out there, right there, just on the tree line, but you can't seem to let anything out. You sit still, taking in one last horrifying image of your bygone friend before he walks away into the forest, never to be seen again by you.